Jennifer is a photographer and amateur competitive salsa dancer. She enjoys, get this, she enjoys traveling. She enjoys traveling and collects weapons from around the world. Now that's a badass. Give it up for Jennifer.
It's not easy being a badass, but it's worth it. And tonight I'm going to share a little bit about how I nurture my inner warrior. And I hope that after this talk, you'll know some steps you can take to develop your own sense of badassedness. So about 10 years ago, I was studying mixed martial arts, one of them being Krav Maga. And in Krav Maga, you learn all these real-life situations you might find yourself in and how to defend yourself. So one day, we were practicing what to do if someone comes up behind you, puts their arm around your neck, and puts a gun to your temple. Now, normally, when you study martial arts, the instructor will explain what's happening, the situation, they demonstrate, and then you match up with partners. So normally what happens is you practice with your partner, you guys look like puppies wrestling, and after lots and lots of practice, you get proficient. Well, in my case, the first time I was the victim in this scenario, I did it with perfect execution at full speed. About a year ago, I was on vacation, and my friend said, hey, you want to go to a gun range? And I was like, yeah. So I go. It's the first time I held a handgun, first time I shot a handgun, and all but 4 of my rounds hit my target. Now, I also nurture my inner warrior in more passive ways. So when I travel, instead of collecting keychains or flags, I collect weapons. I think that weapons teach you a lot about a culture, about people, about their artisans. Plus, if you need to kick some ass, you got some tools. Now, I recognize that my interests in self-defense and weapons are a little unusual, but it all started when I was about that age. That's me around 2, and I don't remember much about that time, but I remember I loved my big afro, and I also was frustrated because my vantage point was like knee or thigh level. So whenever I go out with my mother shopping, I always wanted to be on the counter because that's where all the action was. So one day, we went around the corner to this burger joint, and we placed our order. And we're waiting for the food. I'm sitting on the counter, and this man comes in. Now, we thought he was just going to order, but instead, he decides to rob the place. And after the cashier gives him the money, he picks me up and takes me out of the restaurant. And we walk outside to the sidewalk to the bus stop, and we wait. We wait for the bus. The bus comes, he puts me down on the sidewalk, he hops on to the getaway bus, and he rides away. Now, I heard this story a lot when I was growing up, because if you're at a party and someone's talking to you about how their kid got kidnapped at the burger joint, you're not leaving to get chips before that story's over. So I told this story a lot, too, as I was growing older. And people always ask me 2 questions. 1, did they ever catch the guy? And 2, some version of, why'd your mama let this dude take you out the burger joint? Now, I always answered, 1, I don't think they caught the guy, right? This is Detroit in the 70s. They weren't looking that hard. And as far as my mother, I always, knew that she made the best decision she could in a very stressful situation. So about 3 years ago, I was at my parents' house looking through photo albums, and I come across this newspaper clipping. And the title of the article is, Tot used this shield in holdup. So I'm like, oh, I can get some details, so the next time I tell the story, it'll be slamming. First thing I learned is that dude stole $20. He committed robbery. He briefly kidnapped me for $20. The second thing I learned is that he put a gun to my mother's head. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah. I was afraid that if he shot me, he would hit you too, because you were sitting right behind me on the counter. And that is when my inner warrior was born. She is a 2-year-old with a big afro who just wants me to be safe. It's not easy being a badass, but it's worth it. I have ruptured tendons, been bruised and sprained, but I love it. So if you're sitting there and you know that your inner warrior or activist or artist has been nudging you to do something, I encourage you to dip your toe into the pond of badassery and see where those ripples lead.